Today on Locked On Canadiens, we check in on the rebuild, and Reinbacher is skating.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to a very special crossover edition of the Locked On Canadiens podcast. Before I introduce our guests, I just quickly want to tell everybody that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. My name is Laura Saab, also known as The Active Stick. I'm joined, as always, by the wonderful Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian. And we have two special guests. Bren and Lynds from the Habscast are here. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Ian, you're sitting there quietly just letting me talk away.
No, you're good. Like I said, I'm on the Eastern Seaboard. We've talked about this before, and just kind of waiting for another earthquake to hit at any moment. So if I fall through the floor, that's what happened.
We're all kind of, I think, waiting for weather disasters like here in Montreal, and I think Bren, where you are, it's just extremely windy, and I've been warned that we might lose power. So if all of us disappear, this will just be a very special upside down edition of the Locked On Canadiens podcast. Lynds, how are you?
I'm good. Also waiting for another earthquake. So we'll see how it goes.
So we'll keep our fingers crossed and really quickly get into two pieces of news that I wanted to discuss. The Montreal Canadiens will be playing at the Centre Videotron in Quebec City against the Ottawa Senators in the next preseason. We hate the Ottawa Senators. We don't really want to give them any oxygen. So we're going to move right on to our next piece of news, which is that David Reinbacher is skating with the Montreal Canadiens in a non-contact jersey, which I think his return was not anticipated to be this soon. So I think that's a little bit of good news, right?
Yeah, it seems like it. Yeah. I thought it was funny that the Canadiens put the lines out and he was skating on a pairing with Lane Hutson, which after the game Mike Matheson had against New Jersey is very curious. But I don't know, where are you guys at with David Reinbacher and sort of not only his return, but just the sort of, I don't know, stuff that has come along with him. It seems like unfair, the stuff that he's had to live with. Brent, I'll start with you. Like, where are you at on the David Reinbacher experience to this point?
Well, obviously we're massive David Reinbacher fans here, and we're cheering him on like heavily. So I think we're just hoping for the best from him. And obviously this year just sucks just to begin with, that happened right away. And it's obviously a big year. Like, his team in Cloton was not good. So we were hoping with this team in Laval, like, you can just kind of build on that and develop properly this year. And just to go down like that was awful. And the same game as Line A too. And I feel like he kind of got overshadowed by that. But I'm really looking forward to him coming back, like, especially sooner than expected. Like, it's very encouraging. And the way Laval's like, for him to jump in on that team and have like all those guys around him that are really good players and come into a successful system and everything, and maybe be part of a playoff run, that's for him. And like, I'm really happy to just see him back. Like, we really need him, as we can see with the whole Matheson situation. So yeah, just very happy.
There's an organizational need for David Reinbacher that not only, like, I just saw Laval on Friday in Hartford, and they didn't look like they needed him, but it would be really cool if they got a guy like David Reinbacher back in Montreal. Just, I kind of want to, branching off of that, the Reinbacher conversation, we want to give you guys an opportunity to sort of, show yourselves off to the fan base, right? That's the Canadiens, sort of podcast landscape. There's a lot of us, but there's not a lot of really good ones. I count you guys among the really good ones. I really enjoy listening to not only like the material of what you guys say, but just I feel like I'm just hanging out with you guys, which is, I think, like the highest compliment that I can give to a podcast. Lynds, like, how did this show start? Like, where's your guys' Habs fandom originate from?
So for me, I became a Habs fan because of my dad. He was watching the 2015-16 era, and it was just on in the background. So I was like, oh, this seems kind of fun. And he was raving about Carey Price specifically. So I ended up just going into it, I guess. And then I joined Twitter, which now X, but a few years back, and got even more invested. And then for the pod, Bren and I would just call all the time and talk about the Habs for hours on end. And that's not like being dramatic. Like it was just hours of just topics. And we would joke about starting a podcast, not actually being serious. And then the day of our first episode, that was the day we decided to start it. It was very quick and impulsive, but yeah, that's kind of our story, I guess.
And you get that vibe too when you're listening to it. Like, so I have podcasts, like I have different podcasts that I do at different times, right? So I have one like for when I'm doing my skincare, and then I have one for driving. And you guys are my cooking dinner podcast. Like I'll listen to you guys when I'm cooking. And it really does feel like you guys are just sitting there on the phone talking about the Habs, and we're just listening in. And I think that's something that appeals to both Ian and myself. Like we really like accessible podcasts where people like, you know, you're honest about being a fan, and like all your reactions are like your true fandom reactions. You're not making up hot takes. You're not, you know, you're not trying to make up rumors, things like that. We really just like stuff like that. And I think that there should be more podcasts like that out there. And we really hope that this podcast like really puts the spotlight on you guys. Bren, what about you? What's your Canadiens fandom journey?
Well, same thing with my dad. Just his dad was a Boston fan, so he became a Habs fan as a child. And I guess instead of going the other way, followed my dad. But I've been a fan like for as long as I can remember. Like I would watch Habs games with my dad as like just a tiny little kid. So I grew up in it. I can't even remember how far back it goes, but yeah, just I've seen since like the Saku Koivu and Jose Theodore era. I'm a goalie, by the way, so I'm a big goalie guy on like all the Habs goalies. So yeah, my favorite player was like Patrick Waugh growing up. And like, even though I never got to see him in a Habs uniform, like he was still my guy. So that's kind of my upbringing with it. And yeah, just as far as joining the podcast with Lynds, it was like, we'd call and pretty much like she said, and it'd be hours of just talking. And I think that's why we give off that vibe. It's very natural for us to record together and, you know, just keep talking because we kind of just easily talk to each other. And we've always had that. So that's kind of where the podcast thing came from. And then like I was kind of doing a wrestling podcast one day, and one of the guys just said, hey, if you have like a 9-to-5 job, it doesn't need to be a podcast, but like my advice to you, just have something you do like after work. And I'm like, you know what? Like, yeah. So then I just texted Lynds and I was like, we should kind of get on a podcast thing. And she went out and just texted me that she got a mic like, right away because that's kind of who she is. Like, yeah. So I was like, okay, we're doing it tonight. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, we started right away, and it's pretty crazy how easy it was to jump into, but yeah, really enjoying it.
Yeah. It's funny. I always, Jeff Merrick is a big voice in this sport. And for a long time, he would always get the question, like, how do I break into hockey media? And he would always say, start a blog, start a podcast. And I was always like, yeah, right. Like, what is it? Like, that's not going to work. And then it worked. Like, that's why I'm here. So, it's funny how, this is time that you would be spending anyway, right? This is time that you guys would already be having these conversations. Like you might as well start recording them and start putting thoughts out there. The process of creating for things like this, it doesn't just start because you had an idea and you tweeted it, right? Like this is a good thing that you guys are doing. I wish more people would take this step, as impulsive as it seems you guys did. It seems to work with the vibe of the show. The one thing I do want to ask you guys before we head into our next segment, I came onto this show and I was ranting and raving about this guy, Patrick Laine, and about how the Canadiens should go get him. And I had been saying that for years. Lynds, I'll start with you. Is there a guy in the league that you're like that for? Is there a guy in the National Hockey League that you're like, I need him on the Canadiens yesterday?
He's not in the NHL. But it would be Demi off 100%.
But then you're going to be very happy next year.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a guy like actively in the NHL, to be honest. I can't think of it off the top of my head. It was Demi off for like a full year.
It's a great answer. Yeah. Brian, you got one?
Yeah, I got a question for you. Crosby?
Crosby, yes.
Yeah.
That seems to have died.
Absolutely. It seems like a pipe dream, but it is kind of like ends up starting to tank out a little bit. So you're like, maybe are we back?
Yeah.
Like, No, it's that would be like just so amazing, and I don't think it's gonna happen at all. But like obviously we're going dreams here, so
Yeah, and
Crosby for
the
sure.
Penguins media people are getting real upset about it, so I kind of feel bad like leaning into it. But at the same time, like there are pictures of him as a little boy wearing a Canadiens jersey. Like it kind of feels right. But I
He
feel like
speaks
we'd be
French.
second. Yeah, I feel like we'd be second in the pecking order behind Colorado anyway. But that is what it is.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. In our next segment, we're going to talk about the Habscast's thoughts on the Canadiens rebuild, how they're doing. And then later on, we have a really fun Reddit thing that we're going to talk about. And that's coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens in the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to fanduel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's fanduel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. All right, so let's get into the Montreal Canadiens rebuild. Ian and I have waxed poetic about it for, I don't know how many episodes has it been now, 120 maybe, Ian, 110?
Yeah, something like that.
So we want to give you guys the floor. Maybe let's start with Bren. What are your thoughts on where the Canadiens are right now? If you're looking at them today in the rebuild, what are your thoughts? How's it going? Are we approving? Are we still, despairing? Do we have hope? Do we believe in this front office? All your thoughts.
Yeah, right now I wholeheartedly believe in the front office. I think everything they've done has been, not everything, but like they've done a really good job. And I think especially when you're talking about the culture of the team, like just what they've done in building up this winning atmosphere suddenly this year, and obviously turning it around from the start of the season where it didn't look very good. Like way that the team into it, and I think that's a lot of that goes to Marty, and we don't talk about that enough, I don't think. But like even hiring Marty, like what a great hire, like a proactive hire. And very non-Habs to go with a new guy instead of just reshuffling the same old deck of coaches. Like I really like that there was a new vision that they finally brought to this team. And I think like just from that starting point, we've kind of built from, and I really love what they're doing. And then obviously last year you get the superstar and Demidov that really just puts that like nail in the coffin of, I think this is going to be a really good team. I think that was the piece that was missing where we were like, we really need that offensive superstar. We haven't had that. So I think like just from there, like it's very encouraging. And I can't really see many ways this goes like completely south. I think at the very least, this is going to be a playoff team going forward, and to see what the ceiling is from there. But yeah, very encouraged by everything so far.
What about you, Linz?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same position. I've believed in them for pretty much since they've started. Kent Hughes, Jeff Gordon. Their drafting has been amazing. Like, I mean, just getting Lane Hudson in itself in the second round is enough. But even the underrated draft picks like Adam Engstrom in the third round, Bogdan Kuniashkov in Russia fourth round, I think. Just so many underrated things. The contracts that they've signed have been really good. Slav, Caden Gooley, Cole Caulfield, like they've just done such a good job. The culture Bren just talked about too, but I think they done a great job. The trades too, taking chances on players that need a second chance. Kirby Doc, Alex Newhook, Line A, and we've seen it pay off. So I really like what they've done, and I definitely believe in the front office. And of course, Demidov definitely solidified that belief.
Yeah, that was like of draft moments that I've been a witness for. The Demidov pick was it was theater. Like it was, we had all been waiting for it. We all kind of thought it was going to happen, but like the memories of the past kept sneaking into the back of our minds. Is like, this isn't actually going to happen. I don't know about you guys, and I've said it on the show before. The moment I saw Celine Dion walk out, I knew they weren't going to give her a lemon of a pick. Like, they were giving her the guy we all wanted, so that building would erupt, and that is exactly what happened. With all that said, because we're in the same boat, right? Like, we're both very on board with what the Canadiens are doing, what they're building. What are they missing anything? Like, what's missing from their current, to use a Marty term, their current mix? What's missing from, what they have potentially 5-6 years from now? Lynds, is there something that jumps off the page for you that they're missing?
Probably an additional right-handed defenseman. I think they would need to add another one, whether it's first or second pairing guy, to go along with Reinbacher. And I think the third, that can be kind of a lot, maybe Carrier or somebody else that we have in the system. That's kind of the first thing that pops into mind.
Yeah, Bren, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with that. And so I'm not sure about Kirby at 2C still, and that's mostly just because of the face-offs. Like, I think it's kind of, is he going to be a winger? Is he going to be a center? So we have Michael Hage there too, but that's, a couple years down the road. So it's more about like right now, like there's still a little bit of questions, but I don't think there's anything really like that pressing. I think right D might be a little bit more pressing if you want to go for the playoffs next year. But yeah, I don't think it's like anything too bad right now. We have a lot of depth in a lot of different areas. So.
Yeah, I think that's where I landed yesterday when we were talking about, like, in our episode we were singing Dopish's praises, and I thought about it. I was like, the Canadiens really have, they've got a really good prospect in the pipeline, and they've got this guy who's got massive potential, right? He's playing really well. So they seem to be like, their goaltending seems to be like less of a question mark than it was, earlier this year when they were trying to make Caden Primo happen. And then, you're looking at the forwards, and like, Kirby Dach, obviously. With the faceoffs, but that line is really, like, it seems to be getting along really well. That's the way I'm going to put it. And then I look at, like, in the defense, like they're missing what I think is a number one D. Like, I think they're literally like, that's the thing. And obviously it would have to be right-handed D, but they're just, who is that? We don't have that. Right. So I think that's the big thing. Like, that's the glaring need. Because if you look at, like, even the centers, like, there's guys in the pipeline that can come up, right? You look at the wingers, there's definitely guys in the depth chart that could fit in, right? There's players right now that are fighting for a spot on the NHL team, and like, the reality is a lot of them could get traded, by this time next year, right? So there seems to be an abundance of riches everywhere except for that number one D position, in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, on center first, I think people are forgetting about Oliver Kapanen, who is very quietly putting together a point per game season over in Sweden. Like, this was a guy who was playing NHL games this season and probably would have continued to do so if they could find a place for him in the lineup. And on right D, I completely agree, and I do that even keeping in mind that, like, Logan Mailloux has scored a bajillion goals in the last few days. I don't know if anybody's been following this, but the problem is that we have a really hard time projecting him as an NHL defenseman because of the whole defending part, right? Like, if he could even be like league average defensively, some team is going to play him because his shot is such a weapon. But the fact that we're talking about that as the challenge to overcome really gives me a lot of question marks as to whether or not this dude will ever actually be able to do that at an effective level. Some team will play him because, I don't know if you guys saw this, but Tony DeAngelo just signed a contract. That guy can't defend his way out of a paper bag, but he can score, and that's what he's going to do for the Islanders. But like, I find that it's so funny that we have this prospect that, like, I think a lot of other teams would look at and go, man, we could use one of him. But like, secretly, we're all watching him going, the guy can't defend. So it's a real challenge. A real challenge there. The Canadiens are heading into a big summer, right? We've kind of all posited this summer as the place where they take the next big step. Is adding an established right shot defenseman this summer something that you guys could get on board with? Like, Bren, is that a move that you could see them making this summer?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a move that I've kind of been talking about, because I do think Ken is going to be like aggressive this offseason. I don't know whether it's going to be free agent or trade, but I think we've been loading up on prospects and also like cap space just to, like, specifically timing it for this slot. So yep. I'm thinking they're gonna lean towards that right shot D, because like adding a top 6 forward doesn't make, because you're getting Demidov anyway, and then you have line A for next year at least. So if you're gonna add a forward, it would be the year after this one, not this year, because you're keeping line A. So Yeah, I think that would make sense. This offseason would be adding that big right shot D.
Yeah. What about you, Lynds? Where are you at this summer?
Yeah, I think that's definitely what they'll be targeting. I like we said, I think it's the biggest need that we have and probably one of the only needs. I'd be curious what age they're targeting though, because you said established, and I'd be curious if that's like 22 years old or 25 or even older.
Yeah.
So that's probably my biggest question. I think they'll probably aim maybe around like 24 years old. If I were to take a guess, like they're established, but they're maybe not in their prime just yet.
Yeah, and that would fit right with the core of this team, right? But on the other hand, Laura, David Savard should be available, so maybe they'll just go keep him.
We're not going to talk about that. We're going to move on to our next segment. And our next segment is coming up in just a moment. We're going to talk about a really fun fan thing that the folks over on Reddit did, and we're going to share our thoughts, and that's coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. All right. Ian, can I throw it to you to kind of explain what Reddit did before we get into it?
Yeah, let's set this up. So user on Reddit, Totoroll, on the Canadian subreddit r/Habs, put together what he calls the fan grid, or they call the fan grid. I shouldn't assume that. Which is essentially just a grid of, if you've seen those like the character alignment charts, like chaotic, neutral, that sort of thing. That's sort of what this fits into, where across the top of the grid, it's best player, average player, worst player. And along the side, it's loved by fans, fans are divided, and hated by fans. And I thought it was a fan vote on Reddit. So they all responded in the comments. And this is what they came up with. So we'll run through the grid. We'll get your guys' quick feelings on each of these. We've got 9 of them to go through, so we're going to have to move it a little bit. But we'll start in the first one. This was the free space on the bingo card. Best player, loved by fans, one guy named Carey Price. Is there a possible argument to this one? I don't really think there is.
No. He's right above my head, by the way. So no, I love Carey Price, favorite player ever. So no.
Yeah, I don't think that's possible to disagree there. So we'll move on. Average player, loved by fans. They have Paul Byron, who I love in this spot. Although there wasn't really much average about him. It was either he had like NHL elite finishing and NHL elite speed, and then the rest of it was like, Did the Paul Byron experience, did that resonate with you guys as well in that spot?
I don't know about average. I don't know, Lynds, would you agree with average or?
I guess so. I feel like he's played all over the place. He was like on the first line, then he was on the fourth line, and he was a breakaway monster. So I don't know. And he was really good on the PK too, but I guess you could say he was average. I don't know.
Yeah, I was trying to think of like who would be
Julian
different
era.
instead.
He just played those guys everywhere.
Yeah. Everyone was a third liner or a first liner. It didn't matter.
Yeah, Jordan Wheel was on the first power play unit. Like, it doesn't matter. It matters.
There you go for an average player, Jordan.
Yeah. Laura, any thoughts on Paul Byron?
I really like Paul Byron, just like his like aura. Like I feel that way about David Savard, as much as I don't necessarily want him playing defense on the team. So I feel like Reddit did okay on that one. Yeah,
I think so too. All right, last one in this top row of loved by fans. Worst player loved by fans, Dale Weiss, who I don't know that I can find a better fit there, because he wasn't great. He had a penchant for scoring like really important goals for this team, especially. Yeah, really clutch player. But is there someone like within your era of watching the Canadiens? Because I know you mentioned 15, 16. That's like right around peak Dale Weiss. Is there someone else that fits in that box for you, or do you kind of agree with the Dale Weiss take?
Worst player loved by fans. See, like part of me wants to say like KK, but that's just me. I'm the fan. I'm the fan that loves him because that's his jersey, the red one. So I don't think that would be the whole fan base. So I don't think I don't know if I quite have an answer. I think Weiss fits pretty well though.
I like the personal take on that one. Brent, do you have one that you put there over Weiss?
It's tough to think of anyone, because when there's bad players in Montreal, they don't get very loved. So I think a guy who scores in the playoffs like Weiss did and had that run in that series against Boston, like that's gonna put you up there for being loved, and just the rest of his career wasn't that exactly. I'd agree with that one.
Yeah, he's a case of not how many, but how, in the sense that he scored when and where he scored them was most important. All right,
Yep.
Fans are divided. Best player, PK Subban.
I don't think you can get more divided than PK
I
Subban.
don't think you can. 2016, the fan base fractured in half, and I don't know that it's ever repaired itself. Anyone for you, Bren, that jumps in mind, or is PK the fit there?
Nick Suzuki. With
Really?
the way people talk about him,
Divided?
saying he's a 2C, that guy does not get enough respect, and the fan base is divided. He's a great player, so I'd put him up there right with PK. So
that's really interesting. I think I'd seen recently that there's only like 6 centers with more points than Nick Suzuki this year, and it's just like, when is he going to get the love that he deserves nationally or internationally, considering the states in that as well? Lynds, is that a podcast shared take? Would you put Nick Suzuki there, or is it PK Subban or someone else?
I guess maybe we could say no, because I was gonna say Kirby Dach, but I don't think I love him, but I don't know if he gets the best player status. I think that belongs to Nick Suzuki. So yeah, probably. I think everybody still finds a way to argue about his center status and whether it's 1C or not.
The disrespect.
I know
it's kind of nuts. I'm hoping the season puts an end to that if he ends as a point per game plus player, which he's tracking for right now.
90 points, Nick. 90 points.
Yeah.
If he gets 90 points, there's no way. Like, people can't say he's not 1C at 90 points.
Yeah.
If he gets 90 points, there's going to be a smugness tour I'm going to embark on that like nobody's ever going to recover from.
All right, next up, average player. Fans are divided. David Desharnais. I don't know that this is if there was one on the grid I didn't really know that I agreed with, it's probably this one. Laura, do you have a strong feeling about this one?
I actually do, because I feel like with David Desharnais, like I feel like he was a little bit above average. First of all, I wouldn't say he was elite. That's not, he's not knocking PK off of this pedestal, but it was not his fault in any way. The Canadiens did not have any better options, and everybody hated him for playing a position that he was put in through no fault of his own, right? Literally, there were no better options. And he played like every single night. He maxed out his effort. Like, you never saw a bad night from David Desharnais. It's just that he wasn't capable of playing better. So I think this is just, it makes me feel like really awful for him. But I do think, I feel like the divided part, I feel like he had a lot more naysayers than supporters, right? So maybe this is like a little bit revisionist because it's been so long. But I couldn't think of somebody else to put there.
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody that was average, and like just people were so divided.
Yeah. Yeah. Any thoughts from you guys on maybe the current state of the Habs? I don't know that there's tons of players that would fit in this spot, but it did feel like David Desharnais disrespect.
I would say currently Montembeault, probably the closest to that, because he is around league average for goaltending. And
that's a good point.
So divided on that guy. So that was what I could think of. And just the way you're describing Desharnais there was like reminding me of Matheson so much. I just had to throw that in there. Yeah.
Matheson is a net average. When you take the best and the worst, he meets in the middle somewhere, but it's a false average. It's not really, it's not where he plays ever. Lynds, is there anybody else here that you'd put there?
Not a current Hab, but maybe Jeff Petrie. I think that people are kind of back and forth with him, but he was really good in his prime. And then other people say, no, he was a turnover monster, which I would agree with, but he was very good.
Yeah. All right, let's hustle through these last couple. Worst player, fans are divided. They had Georges Laraque, which I couldn't understand that there were that many Canadiens fans still thinking about Georges Laraque, the hockey player, like, and not just the guy who ends up in tabloids for saying fake trade rumors that they met at a coffee shop or something. I don't know.
I think that's probably the reason why he showed up on this list, is like he wouldn't still be in our consciousness if that happened, right? Because for me, I would have put like somebody like oh my god. Chris, what's his name from last year?
Chris Weidman.
Chris Weidman, yeah. I feel like that would be a better fit here.
It's a great one.
I would agree with that.
All right, we'll keep moving. Hated by fans, best player, Max Pacioretty. I think that's a slam dunk. That dude, like, even while he was here and scoring, everybody was sick of him. I mean, as a Connecticut person, I kind of feel like I owe Max Pacioretty a bit of my allegiance. But even towards the end, I was like, man, you're not making it easy for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely now he didn't get easy by going to Toronto. I think that kind of solidified how we feel about him. But
Yeah,
even at the
he's like,
time,
it's
yeah,
the
he was
best
very
jersey I've ever
contentious.
worn. Man, shut up. Average player hated by fans. They had Alex Galchenyuk. It's another player that I think the best and the worst results in an average, but it's not like a true average. For me, and maybe this is where I think my Christian Dvorak defense comes into play. I think that's the Christian Dvorak spot. He's a
That's a great
perfectly
one.
average replacement level player who everybody cannot stand to watch play hockey.
I think that's,
Yeah,
that fits better than Galchenyuk.
Yeah. Anything of you guys on that one in the average player hated by fans?
No, I totally agree with you. You can't put Galchenyuk there with his 30-goal season and how electric he was at the start of his career. Like I wouldn't put him in average, but he was a good player until like everything down there. But yeah, I'd say definitely Dvorak or someone like that. Like I can't really think of anyone else that would fit in that category. Like maybe Armia like last year, but now Armia is kind of getting a lot of love. So yeah.
I also can't believe people still hate him after he gifted a goal to the Montreal Canadiens in it was 3-1 series. Like, I feel like that should have washed away all of the hate, and now it should be like neutral now.
Just like we all drew it up, a playoff goal. A playoff goal scored by Nick Suzuki from Cole Caulfield and Alex Galchenyuk, just like we all thought would happen. Last one, worst player hated by fans, Carl Alsner. That's a really nice guy, Carl Alsner. Yeah, I feel bad at the way that things worked out. It wasn't his fault that they ended up this way. But is that Lynds, is that the right pick there? Would you put somebody else in that spot?
I think that's a pretty solid pick. I don't think I've seen much Carl Alsner love on my feed and ever.
Yeah. No Carl Alsner boosters showing up on Blue Sky or Twitter to tell you that everybody's wrong about this player.
No, not at all. I would like to think of somebody else, but I can't really think of anyone right now.
Bren, anyone for you?
Maybe Mike Hoffman, but I wouldn't put him as bad as Alsner's career was.
That's a good one.
I think Hoffman had a pretty rough time here, and he's pretty hated by the fans. I think we all wanted to see him go.
Oh wait,
maybe Dadonov too.
You literally just stole it out of my mouth.
Was it Evgeny Dadonov?
Yeah. And for the average, can I just go back for a second?
Montreal earlier, and he was incredible.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now he goes back to the Stars and suddenly I think he just didn't want to be in Montreal, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, could you blame him? The team that he was playing on, it wasn't. Things were not. I don't know if you guys know this. Things were not going well in the Dadonov era. Well, cool. Thanks for taking me through that exercise. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. Thanks to, I'll say again, Todoroll on the Habs subreddit for that idea.
Bren, you had a thought for the average one again?
Yeah, just for the average player that everyone hates, I might say Drouin, honestly. I forgot about him when I was trying to think about it.
It's a good pick.
That would be one. He got so hated this year, and he wasn't that bad, but just not a top-line guy. So,
again, another guy who was brought in, and it wasn't his fault, right? He was brought in as a winger, and they were like, he's going to be the first-line center on his hometown hockey team. Nothing can go wrong.
Doing that.
And they're going to win the Stanley Cup.
He just scored his 100th goal last week. Like, that's the kind of player that Jonathan Drouin ended up being.
Yeah.
Yep.
And again, it was mismanaged. And we have to be careful because Kay loves him. Kay's a big defender.
I'm sure we'll hear about it.
we will hear about it. All right, so that's our episode for today. We didn't do our trivia today. We're moving it to tomorrow, but we're still doing Habs' first goal. So please make sure you tell us who you think will score the first goal against Winnipeg in the game tonight. Before we let you go, Habscast, where can people find your work?
You want me to cleanse?
Yes, sure.
You can find me at Bremidov, both on X or Twitter. I can't call it X, Twitter. And on Blue Sky as well. I'm at Bremidov there as well. And then we have the Habscast on both those platforms and Instagram. And that's at the Habscast.
What about you, Lynn?
At SuperCorpDoc on Twitter. And then I think it's the same exact thing on Blue Sky. I honestly don't use Blue Sky very much, though. So mostly Twitter. And yeah, we have those shared accounts on Blue Sky, Twitter, and Instagram.
And as for us, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. You will find us all over social media at Locked On Canadiens. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. We're on Blue Sky. I forgot. We're not really posting or checking our messages on X anymore. So if you want to reach us, we're on Blue Sky or lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Don't forget Habs for Skull. You'll find my co-host all over the internet at Maybe It's Ian. You will find me all over the internet at The Active Stick. We want to thank you all so much for listening, and we will be back tomorrow with our Winnipeg recap.